Hey, everybody on YouTube. So I'm Eric Tibbers. My guest today is that's your
Aurora
and
Holtzman.
and we are getting ready to hit record on the audio here for an episode for the podcast. So what you're hearing and seeing right now is not going to be on the podcast. So by doing this, we're going to provide a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff to also what happens on the podcast. So I have to remember to hit my start my timer, which I have just beyond my camera here, and I'm using the Discourse app. Have you ever used that?
Mm-mm.
It's a
No.
nice visual timer. It'll let you know how many minutes it's been since you should have stopped, which is a
Oh.
very helpful feature. Our breaks don't always work so well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I got that started, and now I'm gonna hit record here. We're gonna take a few seconds on the audio, but before I do that, I'm just gonna invite you to just take one or two breaths. This makes for good video. Okay, I'm going to hit record and then we'll do 5 seconds of audio. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD reWired. My guest today is Aurora Remember. Aurora spent years of feeling too much, too intense, too sensitive, too emotional, too scattered, and too exhausted. Aurora finally realized that intensity in the form of excitability is the source of her greatest power. Now, instead of beating herself up about not measuring up to her own self-imposed standards, she's on a mission to help people embrace their intensity and use their fire without getting burned. Aurora's background is as a school social worker. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to edit that. My brain wanted to fill that in because my background is as a school social worker. YouTubers get to see this part. Her background is as a school psychologist. And now she just launched a brand new podcast called Embracing Intensity. Aurora, welcome to ADHD reWired, finally.
Thanks so much. It was a long time coming, huh?
I think we tried this like twice over the last year. So it has been a long time coming, but I'm glad that I'm thrilled that you finally launched your podcast.
Mm-hmm, me too.
So let's dive right in. What is this highly excitable person? Is that what it's called? We've heard of the highly sensitive person, but it's not the same thing.
No, there's definitely overlap. I think technically, if you looked from the way they describe it, a highly sensitive person would technically be highly excitable because they pick up on sensory and emotional things more intensely than the average person. And that's really what being highly excitable is about, is picking up on things more intensely than others. But there's also intellectual excitability, so your mind's constantly racing, which there's definitely overlap with ADHD.
I was going to say, check.
Yeah, there's what they call psychomotor excitability, which can manifest in hyperactivity, or for me, it was more of a restlessness. So I have that that engine going, and for me, it was kind of wired but tired. So I have a lot of fatigue, and I wouldn't have ever thought of myself as having an excess of energy, but I actually do have that psychomotor excitability. And then there's also imaginative excitability, which is the, very active fantasy life. Very creative people have that. And so that with the emotion plus emotional and sensory are the 5 areas. And it was a topic I hadn't really heard about until I was looking at behavior problems in the gifted. And my son was struggling in school his first few years. And so I was searching that term, and the term over-excitability came up. And it just immediately connected with me, and everything made so much sense. Because the world is just so much more intense. My mom used to use a term called low screener, I don't know if you've used that with ADHD too.
Mm.
Like our filter is just less than other people.
Okay, I understand. So it's not the inability to sort of to filter out information in the
Mhm.
environment.
Yeah, so it's kind of both of those can go into play because you're just experiencing the world more intensely, either the event itself or you're not screening out as much. So both of those can be a factor. And I think the reason I glommed onto that term is because I've never fit just one category. Like highly sensitive person, yes, I am highly sensitive, but I'm also an extrovert. I'm also a high sensation seeker. So when I go to a highly sensitive group, there's a lot of people who take things really, really personally, and are more shy and reserved, and that's not me. And so I feel like highly excitable encompasses so much of our experience. Same with ADHD. I definitely relate to being ADHD, but I've functioned pretty well in the structure of the school environment, and I've compensated in other ways.
So how would you say it primarily then does impact you, being highly excitable?
Being highly excitable. Well, emotionally, I remember feeling a lot when I was a kid that I was just an emotional roller coaster. When I first hit puberty, I was crying every day after school for the first like 6 months or whatever of my 8th grade year. I always would get that kind of anxiety-induced depression in the spring of every school year, which still kind of happens because I work in schools. But the biggest thing for me is the sensory stuff. I tuned out so much when I was younger that it manifested in chronic pain and chronic fatigue issues.
Mm.
And so I spent so much of my time tuning myself out and toning myself down that I wasn't really listening to my own body signals. And I became really good at ignoring my pain, ignoring my fatigue, and just pushing through. And so now I still sometimes struggle with that, but I am making more of a concerted effort to listen to my body.
I mean, I know it's not that uncommon for people with ADHD to, they skip meals because they're so engrossed in what they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Forget to go to the bathroom until it's like an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So is that like part of that experience as well?
Oh, it can be for sure. I know I experienced that. And I think looking at getting hyper focused on something and excited about that thing, then you're ignoring everything else. It's going from one project to another. I'm so focused on that one project, then there's all these other things that I should be doing. So yeah, that's definitely connected.
So let me ask you. So your background is as a psychologist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to find the highly excitable person or the highly sensitive person. That you're not going to find that in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you say to people who respond to these sort of off-label diagnoses, if you will? You say, well, that's not a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to people?
Well, I mean, nobody actually has said that to me, but then I'm
So
also
these
not
people that I'm saying,
making
I'm just making up.
diagnosis. Well, and I'm not making a diagnosis. It's more, it's kind of all encompassing because I feel like a lot of medical diagnoses would fall under a highly excitable category.
Mhm.
And in fact, the person who is most known for coining that term, uh, Dabrowski, is the psychologist from Poland in the 60s. And if you read his work, he uses a whole bunch of different terms for it. But when he describes it, he describes things like inattentive ADHD, hyperactive ADHD, bipolar, all of these intense anxiety. And actually, he sees it as all of those things as a sign of greater developmental potential. So having those things means
I
you're
like that.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the reasons why it's led itself to the gifted community, is because he actually sees having those heightened excitable, the term excitable nerve is probably scientifically where you would hear it, that their nerve is excitable, or, reactive. That's kind of the way that they use the term. But to him, it's a sign of that you're on the path to like a developmental, like progression. Like his concept is the theory of positive disintegration, so that you have to disintegrate before you can reintegrate into a higher level. And so it's,
I mean, that's not like saying you have to hit like rock bottom before you improve.
no, no. And the way they describe it, I actually read his book from the 60s. It was out of print. It was a pretty quick read, but the way he describes it is like having that self-criticism actually is a big piece of it, because self-criticism can bring self-awareness and the drive to push yourself forward. But of course it has to create that pushing forward. So that's another element of it, is you also have to have the drive to do something with it, not just get stuck in a cycle where you're self-criticizing, but you're not actually doing anything about it.
So maybe a lot of people who who embrace the entrepreneurial journey could maybe identify this way, because we know there's so many of these phrases like failing forward, and which I think is a really important mindset piece too. But it's looking at, all right, so let's try things, let's get that, figure out what's not working in order to figure out what's going to work.
Yeah. And actually, I read a post that was a perfect analogy. An author named Nikki Peterson, I think is her name. She just published a book called The Intense Entrepreneur. And she talks about, she calls it Dabrowski's sweater. And so she describes it as you knit this sweater from your childhood experiences, and you have this sweater that's based on your environment, your parents, your everything, and it's the sweater that doesn't quite fit you. It's not quite you. It's based on everything that's created who you are so far. But that she describes positive disintegration as then unraveling that sweater and taking the yarn that you built on those experiences from your childhood and your environment and all that, to create your own new sweater. And I thought that was a really great analogy.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's making meaning out of the things that you've experienced and out of who you are. Trying to, the old analogy of being the round peg trying to fit in the square hole.
Yeah.
So we have this pegboard. Let's do something else with it.
Yeah. Exactly.
I like that.
So, yeah.
On your website, on your blog, you have a blog post titled 25 Things Only a Highly Excitable Person Would Understand. And I was laughing at a lot of these. I can certainly relate to a lot of these. The first one you have is you have just enough OCD to keep your ADD in check, because you notice things other people don't. You can be very particular about things, but you are also highly distracted in your environments. Hit it right on the nose there.
Well, and what's so funny is that post, my blog wasn't hugely popular. Maybe I'll get like 100 visits when I post it each week. But that week I posted it, I think I had like 1,300 visits or something in that first week. So it somehow got shared and it just went crazy. So not quite viral, but compared to my other posts, it was as viral as it gets. So.
Okay, so number 4 in here, I just think is hilarious, because I totally do that, and I have a friend and colleague who does the same thing, and it's only 1 or 2 people get your jokes, but that's what makes them funny. I totally relate to that idea. Like, that nobody else finds them funny, which sort of humors you that nobody else finds them funny.
Yeah, totally.
So let's see. What else? What were some of the ones that you have maybe heard that were highly identified by a lot of other people?
Well, you know, it was a funny one because some of this was actually came from my Facebook group, the League of Excitable Women, and I threw out there. I threw out like 5 or 10 that I had already written, including the first one, and I asked them, and they just started pouring in. So I was not expecting 25 things. I was expecting less than that. But the one I thought was really funny was something about the accents. Like you have to be careful not to pick up other people's accents lest they inadvertently think you're making fun of them. I can't tell you how many people were like, oh my God, someone else does that?
I have been guilty of that myself, but I will also use accents myself as a way to help myself concentrate. If I notice that my brain is just like all over the place,
Oh,
like
yeah.
something about reading something in an accent like helps me actually like concentrate on what I'm reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love this one. You feel like everyone is more together than you. When you see what others are doing that you aren't, you get that feeling like you should be doing that too.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
You feel like you have 100 tabs open in the browser of your mind.
Yeah.
These are all so good. And they're all on your blog at auroraremember.com.
Mm-hmm.
Click on the blog post there. So how does someone with ADHD end up with the last name of Remember? I mean, it seems,
Well, it's my middle name.
it's your
So
middle name. Okay.
yes, it's my middle name. Started going by my middle name because A, it's memorable, and B, I had my former husband's last name, which is also my son's last name,
Okay.
until last year when I got married again. So I knew Remember wasn't going anywhere. I knew, and was another Aurora Baxter out there anyway, and now it's Holtzman. So, but my family was looking for a family name. My grandma really had this, she liked to have family history, genealogy stuff. And so they looked in the family history books and found the strangest family name they could find. And it was Remember.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So maybe this runs in the family too.
Yeah, well, my son's name is Zimri, which is the weirdest family name on his dad's side. So,
Zimmery?
yeah.
What is that?
It's actually, if you see the Bible story, it's a pretty awful story about a king who's like he takes over a castle and then the castle's burned down and he burns down the castle because they're trying to siege the castle. It's pretty awful. And I don't know if you've seen the Brick Testament. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you haven't? Oh my God,
Mm-mm.
it's like the ADHD dream for finding out what a Bible story is. If you read in a reference to a Bible story, look it up in the Brick Testament and they'll give you a very literal Lego interpretation of the Bible story. So
So the Bible by Legos.
the Bible done in Lego, yeah, it's called the Brick Testament.
Interesting. I think that there's probably a lot of listeners, viewers who will definitely check that out just because it sounds intriguing.
Yeah, and I use it for reference because if I hear a Bible reference in a book, I'm not going to go look it up in the actual Bible, but to see a Lego, and it's very literal. It's condensed, but and visual because of the Legos.
So I want to just point out a few more of these. I just think they're so good, and I relate to so many of these. It might take you an hour and a half to pick out a lamp.
Yeah, that's more my husband than me, actually.
Oh, and this is why I don't go shopping. Like, this is why I truly hate shopping, because I will go and go back and I will put a lamp in my cart, and then I'm like, no, I don't think this is the one I want, and then I'll just leave the store without anything,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll just think about how I still need a lamp for the next 2 years.
Yeah, well, and it's funny too with my husband. He'll look at 2 lamps, and I'll look at those 2 lamps and think they look exactly the same, and one of them he'll say, "Oh God, that's so ugly," and then the other one he'll say, "Isn't this a beautiful lamp?" And to me, they look almost the same. So that was part of it, because he's more excitable on the aesthetic end of things, sensory, beautiful things, and very, very picky about those beautiful things.
You have a class clown / teenage boy sense of humor, but a sophisticated intellect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever heard myself described so eloquently before.
And that was a friend of mine whose husband has ADHD. So,
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. Um, no matter how much you like the person you just met or how long you spoke to them, you will still forget their name by the time they stop talking. By the time I start talking, I forget their name the moment they told it to me.
Me too. I've and people feel so bad about forgetting names, but I realized that like you can have really in-depth conversations without ever using that person's name, and then I try to find some way to look it up. I was actually at an event last weekend, and I met some really awesome people, and I was like, oh, what's their name? But then at the very end, they were supposed to do something where they introduced themselves. So as they did that, I really quickly wrote down their names so I could remember.
I was involved in Toastmasters for a while, and one of the things you often have to do is introduce, if you're working like with a group to do something, and you have to introduce people, like often a number of people that you just met, and I was like, oh god, this is going to be a nightmare. And so often I just outed myself, and I was like, I'm Eric, and I don't remember names, and this is. So okay,
Yeah.
now, these are so interesting, and it's interesting because I remember, well, when I first met my wife, she identified as having as being HSP, as being a highly sensitive person, and I mean, with my fancy graduate school degree, I'm like, that's not a real thing, right? and so it's like, okay, now that I sort of moved past that, I think that the reason why I think a diagnosis like ADHD is really important because it gives us a framework to understand sort of our experience. And
Yeah.
so it might not be a clinical, a peer-reviewed, a psychometrically validated label. But I got to tell you, reading through this list, it's validating to know that not the only one. Where I think it gets confusing is when, let's say, all these things like this is speaking to ADHD. So what are we calling it? I mean, that's one of the challenges and concerns that I actually have with some of Daniel Amen's work is that, he has these descriptors of these 7 subtypes, whatever. But like, so he's describing an experience of people, but like it's not based on research. So it's like, is your ADHD the same ADHD as what the scientific community is actually talking about? Like, I think that becomes really confusing to the general public.
Yeah. Well, and one thing for me is that like dividing, you either are this or you are not, or you're here or you're there. I read a recent book that I was really excited about because she had this concept of intensives. It's called "You're Not Too Much." Leela Sinha, I think, is her name, and it's great information. And it's again like, oh, that's totally me, but very similar to my experience with HSP. There's a handful of things that I'm like, that's totally me. I'm totally that. And then there's other things I'm like, yeah, not so much. And it's very, there's these people and there's these people, and you're either here or you're there. And I don't buy into that concept that you're either this or you're that. There's so many shades of gray. And I think,
Right.
of course, with, we tend to be black and white in a lot of ways, but when it comes to the things you identify with, there's elements that you can pick from all sorts of labels.
Right, and I think that that notion of that we're all on this continuum with whatever behavioral feature or emotional experience that we're describing. So as you said, there's this tendency to want to neatly check the box and put us neatly in the category, but nothing is ever that neat. It's like we are kind of a bit of this, and we're a little bit of that, and we're a whole lot of this. Not as much as that other person, but so it's, and I think that having a more nuanced way to discuss and to make sense of our experiences, I think, is important. But I think that when I don't have a good answer for it. I just think it's an interesting thing to sort of discuss, is that this idea that we want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So when it comes to research, we're all researching the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, I think, nice to have a variety of ways to discuss our experiences.
Yeah, I remember studying psychology in my undergrad. I had this moment of diagnosing myself, and it's not a DSM-4 diagnosis, but they were talking about dendrites and your nerves, the part of your nerves that pick up. And I was like, that's it. I have overactive dendrites. That's my problem. So again, not a medical diagnosis, but.
No, but the words we use and the language we use to describe things is how we make meaning of the world.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm curious, your experience with people that you've interviewed with ADHD, how much overlap you see with like chronic pain issues, such as, for me, fibromyalgia. For years, I was convinced there was a connection between the two, and it's only been the past few years where I've seen posts come out saying that they see a connection, because again, it's that nervous system, overactive nervous system piece.
From clinically, what I've seen in my practice, I've been seeing more of that. I don't know what their research says, and I've not read any research on that. But I do imagine that there are connections. I know that I've had people in my coaching groups, I've had therapy clients who identify with fibromyalgia, and it's interesting that it's a sort of controversial diagnosis. Like, not sure why.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard because they don't have a like set diagnosis.
There's no blood test for it,
Yeah.
Well, does that make ADHD a controversial diagnosis? Well, I guess it is in some circles.
In some circles, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think part of it, to me, is that it doesn't respond well to most Western medical approaches. And so I think if you can't give a pill for it, and there is, I don't know, I've heard some mixed things about Lyrica, but I gave up on.
What's Lyrica?
Oh, it's a medication that they prescribe for fibromyalgia. I have no experience with it, but that's the only thing I've heard that's specifically aimed towards fibromyalgia. But since it happened so early for me, I just gave up on Western medicine years ago. I've never found anything in Western medicine that helps it. So I prefer more holistic approaches, and a lot of it's in my own mental focus, like what I focus on. But I think if you can't fix it with a pill, then it's not real.
Yeah. So how do you, so you for yourself and for your others, you say you help people sort of, what was the phrase, to help people use their intensity and their fire without getting burned. So how do you do that?
Well, I put together a little class a couple years ago that I do with my coaching, individual one-on-one coaching, and then I'm hoping to launch another group in the spring. The first group was great because it pushed my ADHD brain to actually have a deadline for each week of getting the coursework out, because I did it, of course, as the group ran. as
my partner in the coaching group, Nisha, say, we're laying the train tracks down as the train is coming. Yeah.
But what was great is it gave me this foundational course that I have now. It's like a 3-month program. And it's all about self-regulation and focusing on your priorities, figuring out what your priorities are, and just balancing your energy so that you're not constantly spinning your wheels. So I use elements of nonviolent communication to understand your needs and your feelings behind what's going on, and then communicate them. And then I use the acronym STAR, Stop, Think, Act, Request, which actually came from self-regulation work I did with kids. And it works for adults too. So So it's really taking them through their priorities and then developing a toolkit to get, it's kind of basically a self-regulation toolkit. So how do you bring yourself down when you're up here, and how do you bring yourself up when you're feeling tired? And I've been doing a lot more research about self-regulation and stress management, and there's a lot of overlap in the things that are focusing on the things that are energizing instead of the things that are draining. And when we focus so much on the things we have to do and our duty and thinking of it that way, it's draining. And so shifting that mindset to focusing on the things you want to be doing and that energize you, and then you're not forcing yourself to do something, you're just bringing in more of the stuff that makes you feel good.
So tell me what do you do personally to capture the intensity and not get burned?
Well, one big thing for me is really being aware of my environment, and I was doing a really good job of only letting in those things that are nourishing to me. But last year I had to take a little more time at my work, and then I took on some pretty heavy stuff. And so I was kind of a mess last year trying to do all that and dealing with some not my problems, but other people's problems, and getting into that, getting sucked back in.
Professionally, because you are a psychologist, so isn't that what we do professionally?
Yeah, but the school that I'm in is really, there's a lot of stuff going on. You have to do it. Like, it's actually a crazy year right now. But the difference is that the staff that I work with, the systems in place, the building that I'm in is really supportive. And so it's a really good situation. But there were some other things that were going on last year that was a little more draining, and just people needing a lot more emotionally from me, and not just work, but all around. So yeah, not closing people out entirely, but really limiting those draining experiences. And right now I'm getting back in the mode of finding some structure that works for the entrepreneurship part. Because the structure of the school setting creates itself. You have deadlines. You have to get things done before your meeting. You have to have this. You have to have that. You have timelines, all that. In the last 6 months, every month I was launching something. So I had that to drive me forward. But now my podcast is up. I've got kind of the foundation going. So now I have to really sit down and figure out, these are the things I have to do each week, and here's about when I'm going to do them. So,
and how's that going? That self-regulated, those imposed deadlines and.
Well, for each, I got a lot done the last 6 months, so I think that has been going well. But the problem is, it tends to bleed into my personal time now, because I'm not doing some of the stuff, especially the social media stuff. That's what I think I need to really streamline. Because I end up like, I have this little bit of time, I should go interact here on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and then I get sucked into that, and I feel like I need to have a more systematic way of going about it, because it bleeds into my personal time, and then I don't know when am I going to set aside to actually spend time with my husband, for example. So we're working on that, because we also started a B&B, so that keeps him pretty busy.
You just start a B&B, and you're just launch a podcast, and you do groups, and you say you have a retreat center that you got going now, and
yeah, and that's why my podcast took a year longer to start, because the B&B thing, retreat space, all that happened as a total surprise.
And you're still working as a school psychologist? Yeah,
3 days a week.
Aurora, I think we are cut from the same cloth. It's sometimes when I'm like either overwhelmed or I'm feeling like I'm not getting enough done, I'll talk to someone that will just sort of like point out to me what I'm doing. And it's like, Oh, yeah, I am doing a lot right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's like, when you're really like get a lot done in a really short amount of time, but then you like waste a whole bunch of time, you notice that time that you're wasting more than you notice the time where you actually got stuff done. Is it?
Yeah, no, there is truth to that. There is truth to that.
Uh,
Um, What I want to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're about at the half hour mark here.
mhm,
Now, when we come back, now, Aurora, I don't think we even discussed this yet. So possibly on the podcast, this might be edited, but for YouTubers, you're going to get to hear what this is all about. So we do the rewired hot seat. So if you have a specific challenge that you would like help with, and you're talking about sort of that social media engagement,
mhm,
um, we'd like to be able to help you with that and then invite you back either for a short interview or we can record a message or a quick audio clip to give us an update about a week or two later.
mhm.
Would you be up for doing that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. So, Aurora, we will be right back. When you come to sit in the hot seat, we're going to actually help you with figuring out how to streamline some of these social media things that you just shared with us. So, we will be right back. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. I should put like product placement in my water bottle. So, this water
Yeah,
break is brought
totally.
to you by Elliptigo. You ever seen an Elliptigo?
No.
It's this it's basically it's like a standing bike. It's like an
Mhm.
elliptical, like the
Oh
motion of
yeah.
an elliptical, but it's like a bike that like goes. Hence
Oh nice.
go. I love it. It's so much fun.
Oh fun.
All right, for the YouTubers, I would encourage you to come to my website. It's go to ADHDrewired.com. You can get all the episodes, show notes for this episode. Also, upcoming is the ADHD Rewired Coaching and Accountability Group. Depending on when you watch this, you may have already missed your opportunity. But if not, early registration for the winter session, which begins January 16th. Early registration is November 16th to the 22nd. If you want to save 40%, which is about a little more than $500 off the cost of registration, join us and register during early registration. Only 8 spots, though, are going to be available for early registration. So that's all. This is nice because it's like I'm not doing any editing. It's just I'm just going off the cuff. It's like letting people see the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm praying that I don't forget to resume the audio recording. And
Oh.
as I'm keeping my hand on the recorder, I'm just like, don't forget it. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. All right, I'm gonna take one more sip of water, and we'll come right back. You good?
Yeah, I forgot to bring water, but I'm fine.
I can talk for a minute or two more if you need to.
Nah, I'm
Okay.
good.
All right. We're back in 3, 2, 1. And yes, I did hit record. All right, we are back with Aurora Remember. Aurora, you just shared with us before the break that you've been kind of struggling to keep up with sort of the social media engagement. Lay this out for me. Lay out some of the areas that you're having a hard time sort of staying on top of with all the work that you're doing.
Well, I think it's the consistency is the biggest thing, and then wasting time. And one thing I am going to do today is sit down and kind of just write down the things I need to do every week, because I haven't really done that. So for example, in my group, I have like daily engagement during the weekdays. I have 5 posts that I do, and it works pretty well when I do it, and I get it in Hootsuite and it's all set up, so it's all there, but then I forget, one week and don't do that. So those are the things that I know I need to do. But I think the biggest thing for me is, so I really was focused on Facebook, and then I started Instagram, and because I live in a beautiful place, people started following me. It's not a huge following, but it's more of the people like in the Pacific Northwest who are seeing the beautiful scenery. But then I started one for my podcast because I didn't really want to mix in my promotional stuff with those pretty pictures because it's all pretty. And actually, it's funny because I started with these like bright orange promo things, and I was like, okay, I can't have an Instagram that's just all bright orange. It's just too much. So I started working in some like inspirational pictures with my photos from the other Instagram and stuff. So I'm working on that, but then I feel like I'll come home on a day where like I just have a little bit of time, or I have when, the nights I don't have my son, and I'll like get sucked in and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do this. Oh wait, I'm going to do this. And then I just get like on these,
Yes. You are the human pinball, and like
yeah.
everything around you is bouncing you all over the place.
And then I feel like I'm spending way too much time doing that and not like, living my life and interacting, building two businesses at once. My husband and I are working on setting aside some quality time to actually spend together, because when I'm free, he's busy. When he's free, I'm busy. And some of it is just unnecessary. So I think planning it all out at the beginning of the week or at the end of the week, probably Fridays, and then having like a set time, or I don't know.
Okay. Have you ever, do you ever do any kind of mind mapping?
Not specifically, like, not really specifically.
Like where you get everything out of your head and then just sort of segment all the different things that you have going on?
Not in like a mind map per se. I found out the whole bullet journaling thing, but I open a notebook and then I write, it's just like still all over the place. Like it's not going back and finding it is the problem. So I'm working on that piece.
Okay. And one of the things that we're actually talking about right now in my coaching groups is to sort of document and really identify what your process looks like. Like, what are the rules of what tools do you use? And if you're trying something new, like what's governing how long you're going to use it for? Trying a new, like right now, I'm trying a new tool, Nisha and myself. We are right now working on Asana, and we decided for the next 3 months, we're going to be working within the context of Asana. Are there things that we're finding that maybe we don't like about it? Yes, but we're working in the context of Asana. We're sticking with this for at least a 3-month period, and then we're going to reevaluate. But I think the importance of first doing sort of a brain dump, getting what are all the things that you have going on. And it can be specific around like your social media and the posts that you're wanting to make. So maybe in the center of a mind map, you can have social media, right? And then where do you want to be posting? What kinds of things do you want to be posting? What's the frequency that you want to be posting those things? And then looking at how do you do it? Now, you said you wanted to sit down and sort of document your whole workflow, right? Now, in my groups, we were just talking about this today, where how right before we hit record, I was going through this whole like checklist of everything that you have to do. Now, what I have done is I didn't sit down to like, what are the things that I need to be able to do? Because I can't do that. Like I can't see the whole big picture like out of context of the process. So what I do is I build the process as I'm doing the tasks. So like when right before we hit record, I was telling you about how I'm starting to do some of these things on YouTube. And I added, when I mentioned that to you, I added YouTube to that workflow because like that's how I build my processes. I document as I go. And then if I pull that up, my brain's like saying, thank you. Thanks for not making me go find that information somewhere in your brain, because your brain is as organized as your desk is right now. Not at all.
You should see my desk at work though. It's quite organized.
Is it?
Yeah, people are amazed. It's because I get rid of stuff as soon as I'm done with it. If I have one accordion file with all the student information, and as soon as I'm done, it goes to the district office, and that's it.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, but I have a lot of structure at that job.
Well, it sounds like part of that structure, though, is this element of accountability.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because there's the to-do list program that I use in that job called Bonsai, and it was for Palm Pilot. And they don't
That's
make
so
it anymore.
cute.
They don't make it anymore, and I'm so mad because if I can't leave this school now because I can't work in another school because I cannot do my school psychology job without this program. And there is
Can you
no
export stuff from it?
no, I tried. I did manage to get it on my computer at the other building because it was in my like shared file, but I couldn't like send it to someone else. But it's the reason why it works so well for me is because it collapses items down. You can copy a branch. So for an evaluation, for example, it has all the stuff that I need to do for that student, and then I just put the student's name on it, and then I can open it up and see what I have left. And then I make sure, like still sometimes I'll forget to call the parents to invite them to the meeting every now and then, and that's really embarrassing. but it's all there, and I don't have to look at all of it unless I open it up. And it color codes it by date. And so when I put the next date that I have to look at it, I can look at my whole day and go, oh no, I can wait for that one tomorrow. Oh, I can do this. And so I only have to look at the things that are red. I don't have to look at anything else.
I am almost certain that there are other programs that do very similar things to what you're
Yeah.
suggesting. If the listener or viewer right now is like, I use a program that does exactly that. What's the best way? Should they send you a tweet? What's the email?
Tweet would be good.
What's your Twitter handle?
It's Aurora Remember.
Okay, so so tweet at Aurora. Let her know what that tool is that you're using. Okay, so you said that one of the things you also said was that you get home and you sort of start one thing, you're sort of bouncing all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
A strategy that I use when I'm sort of recognizing that, okay, I'm sort of all over the place right now. It's the 2 sticky note strategy. So what I do is on one sticky note, and I usually put this on my computer, so if I'm working at my computer, but you can do this in other contexts as well, is I have the thing that tells me what it is that I'm actually supposed to be doing right now. Okay. On the other sticky note, it says what it is that I'm not supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah.
And it seems like really, but yes. And if we think about why that is actually helpful, one, it helps with inhibitory control. So the moment that like something else is coming in at us, we don't have to rely on our working memory to sort of stay online to keep reminding us that, oh, we're not supposed to be doing that. Like that is right there. Right? So it's setting up your environment in the first place. So let's say you're doing something in one of the rooms in your home. Maybe even putting out a sticky note on your door, right? That tells you what you're doing. And if you need for any reason to leave that room, but with the intention of coming back for it, grab the sticky note and like put it on your forehead until you come back to the room. So it's really making it sticky, no pun intended, to help you sort of stay focused on what you are doing. Because I think there are certain times when we need to unwind, and I can totally relate. So you have all these things going on. It's like, I got to be doing things all the time, but we don't have to be doing things all the time. And when we find that we're getting sucked into the things that we sort of know aren't important and we're feeling kind of bad about it, you might want to ask yourself, do I just need to decompress a bit more? And then allow yourself to do that, sort of being intentional about that.
Yeah.
So going back, though, to the documenting the process in the context of your workflow, how would you see yourself doing that?
Well, and I do tend to be a big picture person, so I do find like mapping out, like when I did my website, and I kind of listed the things that I wanted to accomplish I was working with a business coach for 6 months, and so that was really productive, and I had that accountability, and I joined a mastermind group, but then I slept through the last one because I was a little sick and I felt bad, but that accountability piece is definitely helpful. And so, but I haven't actually sat down and written down like, okay, these are the things that I should be doing for social media. These are the things that I should be doing for content creation. Now that the big things that were on my list to do with a timeline are done, I want to actually be spending more time creating the new content for like my stress management thing and stuff like that I'm working on. And so I need to set aside a time for that. And so I'm still trying to decide how much structure and how much like openness I want to have. But the first thing I need to do is to get a feel for exactly what needs to be done, because, yeah.
And I think that needs to be the first step in the process of figuring that out, is you have to be able to see everything that you have going on.
Yeah.
And because what happens sometimes is that we have these moments where we're in our mind, like we are thinking about everything we have to do, and it's so overwhelming that we get almost paralysis by it, right? So by putting it out, whether it's writing a list or doing it in a mind map, it may be overwhelming. And I even tell my clients that, if you're a little bit overwhelmed by that, I would say that's actually a really good thing. Here's why. On a mind map, you can work with that information in your head. Like, what, you can't do anything with all that information. Like, we don't have that capacity to move all that information around, hold on to it while we're thinking about, here's these 9 things. Like, what should I do first? Or like, we cannot mentally manipulate that much information in our mind.
Yeah.
So by doing it on a mind map, we can, we click the little bubble, we move it around, we reorganize it, we sort it in different things, and we can then decide, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do later? What do we need to maybe learn? What do we need to get help with? So I would really, really encourage an initial mind map, whether it's by hand or any of the sort of computer programs that are out there. Are you familiar with any of, like, have you ever used a mind mapping software?
I think I might have downloaded one. I may have even heard it from you at some point, but I haven't actually played with it yet. So.
Okay. I use a program called Simple Mind. I've been told by many people that it's not very simple. I've just been using it for years, so it's sort of familiar with. There's also a program that I love called, it's a freemium website called Real Time Board. And that's where I document my entire workflow. So it's a digital whiteboard. Have you ever used Prezi?
I've seen it. I haven't used it.
So Real Time Board, I believe, is built on the same platform that Prezi is built on. So you can zoom out as much as you want to and zoom in as much as you need to. So I have boards that I have different components to different areas of my own launches. I have different areas I've mapped out all the processes of my podcast workflow. And that's been so helpful. And it's a process to document the processes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we think about structuring time in a way that we have to sort of manage and create ourselves. Have you ever done any kind of time blocking?
Not specifically now, but that is actually kind of what, if you mean, like, I want to start like batching stuff so that I have a certain, I do create all my posts for the week all at once and that sort of thing. So I'm not spreading it out here and there. I think that would definitely be more efficient than the way I've been doing it.
So what I personally do right now is on Thursdays, I have about 3.5 hours that's blocked on my calendar, repeated every week for content creation. I have the same thing again on Fridays, about 4 hours specifically designed for content creation. Now, if something is going to compete with that I have another meeting, because I'm pretty protective of that time, right? I don't let things encroach on it. If there's something that comes up, that I will look at my week and say, okay, is there any other time during the week that I can move that block of time to? So that then allows the structure, but also allows the flexibility. Right? Because schedules are tools that allow us to sort of figure out our life, right? They're not tablets that are etched literally in stone. That, it's on here. I can't move it. It's when we make those high priority items, like content creation is a high priority item.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to necessarily be urgent until it's like your listeners or your readers or your people from your coaching group are anticipating content, and now
Mm-hmm.
about like yesterday, right? So it's by focusing on that batch time, as you said, to work on that content creation, to work on system development.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that thinking about taking time to develop time-saving systems
Mm-hmm.
is so important. Like we think we're so busy that we just got to hammer out this one blog post or this one post. But if we take a time and say, okay, as I'm doing this, let me document the process that I'm using to do this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's going to it's going to add time in that individual task. But what that's going to do is you're going to be able to see this entire workflow that you're creating if you continue to build this process documentation. Have you ever read the book E-Myth?
Mm-mm. No.
So I know for most people with ADHD, when they hear documentation, their eyes kind of glaze over and they just, imagine themselves in some boring classroom somewhere, when they just did stuff to keep themselves from falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you relate to that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So I listened to the book E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and it gave me the why for understanding the value of documentation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know for me, if I don't understand the value of why, like there's
Yeah.
very little chance I'm going to do it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard many times, you should document your workflow. You should document that. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's what other people do. Right. But like
Well,
when he explained the value of it, like it made so much sense to me. And it really does allow us to find time that maybe you didn't even think was there.
yeah. Well, and that's, I think, because of my school job, I get the value of it. I think the problem that I was having in the last year is that I was doing so many new things that I might not be doing again. Like I'm hoping I'm not going to redo my website for a long time. I'm hoping I'm not going to relaunch a podcast for a long time. So each of those things was a new task, a new system, and so I just never sat down and I figured out what needed to be done, but it's not in the same way. But now I feel like I'm at a place where I have these recurring tasks that are going to be continuing to come up. And so that's the part that I need to sit down and do that.
There's a have you ever seen the book Virtual Freedom with Chris Ducker?
Oh no,
Chris Ducker, is that his name? And having name like, is that the actor? Virtual Freedom. He's like I think he's from England. He has an accent. Oh, that's so bad. It's not intentional. I'm so sorry. So he has this in his book. He has this exercise where you take a three columns and you document what are all the tasks that you don't like doing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that you shouldn't be doing, that somebody else can be doing it? What are the things that you don't know how to do? Okay. I think those are the three things, but it's looking at these kinds of tasks and really deciding what can be delegated, what do you not know how to do, and really deciding on where to be spending your time. Right? Social media stuff, like I know when you're in the beginning of creation of a business, you're going to be doing a lot of that work yourself. Right? But as you're doing more and more of this, handing some things off. Now I know that you do work with someone that edits your podcast, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and why did you decide to do that?
Because I have 10,000 other things I need to focus my energy on.
Okay. Is there anything else then that you can hand off?
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing is she does actually, they're part of their packages is some of the social media piece, but I'm so particular about how I wanted certain things to be done. So now I'm doing those pieces.
Aurora, part of my dear, part of delegating, and I've been learning this a lot this year. Part of delegating means letting go of the precise way that you want it, and being happy with good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I know it's hard, and because especially as someone, as yourself, who knows exactly how they want it and they get excited about that. But part of that too is also the value of documentation when
Yeah.
you really explain specifically how you want something. And one of the best ways that I like to document is sort of after the fact. So when you can't think of everything that you want to tell that person to document, you should just tell them, you know what, if I don't like it, I'm going to explain why. And we're going to document that process so you know. And so each time that person does something that you don't like, it's just you're going to give them feedback. Right? And it will get closer and closer to what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about that? I'm taking this like slightly nervous smile, but
well, what's funny is so I had this whole process that I did for my cover art for the podcast, but it involved taking a picture, converting it to sketch, then changing the color and all that. And the first couple were really easy, but then as I went along this program, noses keep disappearing, and then I have to mess with the levels, or the background blends with the hair, all the stuff that then takes way longer than I planned. But now I'm getting used to all those things. It's going faster again. So, we'll see. I guess that would be something that I can probably eventually delegate to someone else to do.
Eventually delegate. That sounds like that task is going to get put in the later pile. And in the later piles where good intentions go to die. Right?
Yeah.
So thinking about the tasks that you have right now, do you think you can identify 1 to 3 tasks that you can possibly delegate, even if they're just one-offs?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's hard. Creating those, creating the posts, especially for Instagram and social media, the images, the graphic images and stuff is probably something that would be delegatable.
Have you ever used Fiverr?
I've seen it. I don't think I've actually used it, but yeah.
Give Fiverr a try. Get it. It's a small job on Fiverr. I recently used it. I need a photo of myself with the background removed, so it could be in PNG format. And I was sitting there for half an hour trying. I'm like, this is silly. So I went on Fiverr and I posted it up there. The whole post probably took me 3 minutes. It cost me $5 and it was turned around in less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was awesome. You know, it's kind of, just because I can do it, and I probably would have eventually been able to figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Doesn't mean that I should do it. So,
yeah.
Aurora, let me ask you this. Would you be willing to identify and delegate 2 tasks within the next 7 days?
Yeah, I can look at especially the social media posts. I'm not sure what else. I mean, the graphics would be easy enough to, because now I have a system down.
Okay, so in 7 days from today, I want to hear back from you to share whether or not you did this. So, you know how on they listen to the news and they'll say, we tried to reach out to so-and-so, but so-and-so didn't respond to our request for, you don't want that to happen, do you?
No.
Or, I follow up in 7 days, but I haven't heard from you. Like, Aurora?
Yeah.
So I don't want to say I tried reaching out to Aurora, but she was nowhere to be found. She was buried under a pyramid of sticky notes that were. She was trying to not get distracted from where she was going. So, what do you think? Does that seem reasonable to you?
Yeah. I'll take a look at that.
You totally have the grin and bear smile right now. Tell me what's going on.
Well, no, I hadn't thought about the Fiverr thing. I think because the graphics piece is something that I can do, but it's not. I don't have to do it, especially when it comes to things like inspirational quotes and stuff. I have a Word document full of those quotes someone can pull off of and take a picture that I already have so I already have it in I have a cloud file folder of the appropriate pictures that I've already taken. So it's my picture in quotes. So it's just
you're halfway there.
Yeah.
You just identified something to delegate.
Yeah. So that's a really easy one. And then the podcast graphics I might be able to as well, but that one's a little trickier because there's a few more steps involved.
I created a template for my podcast art. Now I'll tell you, the episode level artwork, I don't really love it. Like every time it comes up, I'm like, I want to change that. But here's the thing. It really doesn't make that big of a difference in my opinion. And I don't want to spend an hour every episode making artwork.
Yeah.
Well, let me change that. I would actually like to spend an hour because it's fun to do that. But that is not important stuff. Like that's like the ooh, that's shiny and fun, but that's not moving me forward on my bigger goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll talk to Christy too about because they, now that I have the system down and that is supposed to be part of it. I just didn't.
Wait a minute.
Really...
So this is basically a conversation you have based on you're already paying for the service and you're just not utilizing this part of it.
Yeah, part of it. Yeah. So that part I do need to do.
So did we just identify both tasks?
Yeah, because there's a couple social media parts I need to clarify with her because I haven't really been clear on which parts they're going to do and which parts I'm going to do. So that conversation will definitely happen.
Aurora, I am so looking forward to hearing back from you in 1 week, letting me know that you have taken action on these 2 items. Now, I'm going to suggest that as soon as we finish up this call, that you write these 2 things down. So you're like, what did I say I was going to do? So let's wrap up right here. Aurora, first of all, thank you so much for coming on and sitting in the hot seat. And I hope it wasn't too hot for you.
Yeah. No.
As she once again using the grin and bear smile. As everyone watching it on YouTube is be like, she does not want to do this. Oh my goodness. Okay, so how can people find you, what you do, your podcast? Give people all that kind of stuff.
And I was going to say the grin and bear thing. I think it's mostly just because I have to be clear on what I want to communicate before I can communicate with the other person. That's the part that I'd like. So I need to work on my own clarity. So that's why looking forward to that part. To find me, my website is auroraremember.com, and I have my blog there. And I also have a direct link to my blog page, or to my podcast page is embracingintensity.com, but it all goes to the same website, just that podcast page. And I have a group called the League of Excitable Women on Facebook. So far, I work mostly with women. My son heard the intro of my podcast and he's like, why just women? And I think it's mostly just because that's my personal experience. That's what I can relate to. So, that's mostly, and I have in the Portland, Oregon area, I'm starting to do live events once a month with mostly teachers, healers, creatives, people who have some sort of mission, but they're getting burnt out. And it's all about keeping your fire alive and supporting each other in that.
I love that. That sounds great. Well, Aurora, remember, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I'm so glad we finally were able to do this.
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck with the podcast and with everything else that you are doing. And we look forward to hopefully hearing back from you next week. So for the listener, this will be the part where you either find out if the outro music is coming. We didn't hear back from Aurora, but if we did, here's what she did. Thanks, Aurora.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, so the audio recording has not finished, but we're still talking to YouTube viewers here. So thank you very, very much. Do you want to write down those tasks so as you head off of here, you're like, I'll do it later. We know what happened.
Yeah, I don't have anything to write with except for hold on, I'm opening a little document. There we go. I'll just create a new doc. Okay. There. So I'm
what's going to help you remember to look at that doc?
Well, I'm going to keep it open right now because
Okay.
as soon as I get off the phone with you, I'm going to look into the part I'm already paying for.
Awesome. And if you get this in today, just like send me a quick message, record a quick MP3 or whatever, and just send it over to me. I need a photo of you.
Okay.
Okay, so if you can send that over to me.
Okay. So the two things I have is to follow up on exactly what aspects of the graphics and social media posts the podcasting group is supposed to be doing, so I can make sure that's clear, and then look into outsourcing Instagram posts because that's really easy to outsource.
Awesome. You're gonna
Yeah.
feel this whole new, sense of freedom, and it's once you start doing this. I mean, because you're getting that podcast edited. It's gonna allow you to focus on those bigger things.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for the YouTube viewers who haven't fallen asleep yet. Thank you. And just as a reminder, you can go to ADHD reWired to find the show notes for this episode, learn about my coaching group. Go to coachingrewired.com to go to the direct link for that. And we are also on Facebook. We have a Facebook community. We screen everybody there. You will hear from Nisha Subramanian, who's our community manager, group moderator, and in the coaching group, she's the queen of accountability. So if you state your intention, she's going to follow up with you. So thank you, and thanks for watching.